classroom. Now, I'm using materials from Newton Learning, and Newton Learning is kind of used widely by publishers and universities and has a lot of major partners in the field. But they produce a number of materials that are really useful. And we're actually going to be looking at one of their products for adaptive technology and how to use online learning content during the course. As we start looking at learning management systems and approaches, I'm going to be talking about a number of them, and I'll be using, as an example, some of the things they have. But actually what I want to do is take some materials they put together on the flipped classroom that I think are really helpful. You'll see that these materials can be retrieved from Canvas. So I'm going to go through it part by part, but what you're looking at is from their webpage. It's something they put together, and you'll see that I have the link that will take you in Canvas to their page, and then I've also embedded it as a page in Canvas so you can just look at it as a whole as we do this. But as we're just going to go through that step by step to talk about the idea of turning traditional education on its head by creating a flipped classroom, where many educators are experimenting with this idea of a flipped classroom model. So what is it, and why is everyone talking about it? Well, the flipped classroom inverts traditional teaching methods, delivering instruction online instead of in class and moving homework into the classroom. And what we're doing is we're flipping this on its head. We're saying it's not just about schoolwork and homework and they're somehow different. And it moves away from the 5-step lesson plan where I tell you what I'm going to teach, I set you up for it, I present it, I give you some practice in the group, I guide that practice a little further, and I send you on your merry way to practice this further on your own so that you get out of acquisition into fluency, maintenance, and generalization. But it's saying, actually, we move those things together. We think about what things are best done in face-to-face encounters in the classroom, and what kinds of things are best done with text, with technology, in the community. That is, we look at learning to be placed where it best belongs. We make the best use of time and place in our learning, and so we rethink what we do where in that process. I'm, as you know, fascinated by this model, and I really like this idea. We'd like to think about how we could use this more effectively in whatever we do. I thought maybe we could give it a try in our own little work in graduate school here and see how it works. But let's talk about how it changes. What's the inversion? So we go from the traditional classroom where the teacher's role is essentially to be the sage on the stage. Now, in the first couple weeks of this class, I decided to do sage on the stage and just get my content points on every theoretical matter you could see and lecture at you madly with slides. And some of you liked that and some of you didn't. But what I'd like to do in the second half of the class is actually start to flip things, where we look at my role not as sort of the sage on the stage who has somehow the answers to everything, but rather a guide on the side. That the teacher's role is really to be a consultant to the students, to be really the person who, with some knowledge and experience, is able to bring you to where you want to go next. So what would happen in this flipped classroom model? Students watch lectures at home at their own pace, communicate with peers and teachers via online discussions, make use of digital technologies to do things that really can be done anywhere, anytime. Concept engagement takes place in the classroom with the help of the instructor. That is, the function of the instructor, frankly, whether you're doing that in the classroom or you're doing that online with students, but we're getting into smaller encounters where the instructor actually starts to use his or her skills to guide student learning in areas of difficulty. Ill-structured situations, problem-based learning, doing things that allow the student to actually move into higher levels of learning. Several times tonight I'm going to reference this notion of moving from acquisition to fluency to maintenance to generalization, but talking about the idea that learning should always be permanent and portable. We always want to think about how we move it on. So the role changes. Now, a theoretical framework that they propose for this is the idea that both technology and learning are key components in this flipped classroom. They both influence student learning environments, but as we start thinking about this classroom flip provides the opportunity to learn through activity instead of just learning through hearing or learning through knowledge dissemination. It actually provides for more activity, which influences the learning environment, which in turn influences educational technology, which has been changing because of the educational flip. So it all keeps moving around. We create a cycle where our experiences of learning through activity cause us to look for ways to make better learning environments, better learning technology, use the technology available. Really, if I were to redo this chart, I'd be putting those arrows in all directions here because one always influences the other. And the real theoretical framework is that by changing the kind of interactions we have with students to really thinking about why should I have you together to do this? Well, let me stop for a second and give you an example. I want you to imagine that you're at a faculty meeting. Often most unpopular point when I talk to people. Okay, so here we are in this faculty meeting, and the number one complaint that people have, I think quite legitimately, about faculty meetings is that you've shown up to have someone read you email. That is, you get a series of announcements, you get told a series of things. All of those things could be done through email. All of them probably have been done through email. But in order to assure that you actually listened and paid attention, you're made to sit there and listen to them once again. I always think that's about the worst possible use of a faculty meeting. This is really the time when we ought to be engaging instructors in the process of instructional planning, about talking we're going to do, about working together on alignment on things. That is, to bring people together to simply communicate to them one way makes little sense. We're trying to flip the classroom in a similar way. So I started the quarter by kind of talking to you one way, just out of my slides, and there you go. And what I like to do as we merge in the last week's class is start thinking about what would happen if we rethought how we work class, we thought how we engage together, if we thought about time in class as something we want to spend really on things that require us to learn together in a social context. So how did it come to be? Well, many factors influenced how this developed, but two in particular were important. It started really 2007 with two teachers at Woodland Park High School who looked at the fact that they have software that will record PowerPoint presentations. So I thought we'd start tonight by just doing what they did then. I'm showing you a slideshow that I have recorded, and after recording and posting their live lectures online for students who missed class, like those of you who are away on vacation or enjoying yourself wherever, or just overwhelmed with the demands of work and parenting and who knows what else. But in any event, there's to talk to teachers around the country about doing this, and so teachers began using online videos, podcasts, all kinds of things, so that classroom time became reserved for collaboration. We use classroom for the things that we need people together for, and realize people could access this outside. So I want you to think about how this move to started out as a vehicle for how teachers could more effectively help students who missed class, to one that really became effective in working with teachers in all kinds of circumstances that we saw. So what's driving it now? Well, there are two key factors that are driving this adoption. One is that we're getting poor learning outcomes with traditional education. The one-size-fits-all, the factory model of education, gets limited concept engagement and fairly severe consequences. People don't make a lot of the kind of progress we would like. So we see a lot of people not graduating, and we see that dropout has an effect on the economy in a whole variety of ways. I won't belabor this point. You can look and see what happens there. But first thing we notice is this really is not working well. When we start thinking of the idea that we want to provide a quality education for every child we teach, then we realize the way we're doing it really works for some people and others. Now, a system of winners and losers is not what most people have in mind when they think of equity and ethics in education. And the other thing that, of course, spurred that was the prevalence of online video. The available video and increasing student access made it possible to flip the classroom, because as students found all these films online, they often found better and more useful, or at least more immediately available, ways to get the explanations they wanted. So you look at the percentage of adults who viewed online video, that's been increasing, of course, much more dramatically for children. We look at something like Khan Academy with over 2,400 online video lessons, and the fact that you can access them anytime. I myself access them rather often for math concepts that have gotten fuzzy, or things I'm not quite sure how to do. I found them incredibly useful. Obviously, we want to provide the kinds of things I can do as a teacher for a student in a classroom as well. But what we're thinking is, how can we make use of all this? Well, of course, all this online video drove the process. I think online video, both in class and out of class, can be a tremendously useful tool to get something that in a much more concise and multisensory way gives you what's important about something. From a vantage point, granted, it's always from someone's perspective, but it's not that reading your textbook or listening to me is going to give you an independent perspective necessarily either. Much as I may try to balance the many positions that go on, just like a film, it's filtered through my own knowledge and experience. So what does it look like when people adopt it? Well, we're going to look at one high school that flipped their model with great success in Detroit, and you saw that in this model, which we have some data on, teachers created 3 videos a week, and teachers watched these 5 to 7 minute videos at home, and then they spent class time doing labs, interactive activities to illustrate concepts. Now, of course, you're thinking to yourself, 5 to 7 minute videos, that's about the time people hold attention, so why is Steve talking to us for such a long period on this slideshow tonight? Well, good question, but I thought I'd keep it in one piece together for your purposes here. But my guess is most of you are going to watch this in shorter segments. That is, you won't watch all of it at the same time. You'll actually watch it at a number of times. Well, what happened? Students got more immediate feedback. Students didn't get as frustrated. Students were able to revisit concepts they didn't understand. One of the great things about the media you produce is people can go to it whenever they want to. And most important, teachers were able to support students in class. You could spend your class time actually working with people on things that were significant to them rather than always getting to where, oh, we're out of time, no time to do anything else, no time to really get to what you're having difficulty with. That is, it changes how I deploy my own skills as a teacher. Now, I want you to think about it as an administrator in a school. What would happen if we could get more focused teacher time available for every student in the school? And that means, as an educational leader, one of your jobs is going to be figuring out how we can do this in a school. So, what were the results? Well, before the flip, 50% of the freshmen were failing English in the school, and 44% were failing math. And you see what happened. So, we also went from 736 discipline cases to 249. So, if we look at the results in that school, you see that it not only reduced student failure, but student discipline issues. We often say in behavior management classes, we can never give you a behavior management strategy or skill that will overcome poor instruction. If you have a curriculum, you can't solve a curriculum problem with a behavior management tool. And one of the things that showed us is by flipping classrooms, provided far greater student engagement. Or let's put this in the simplest terms. Nothing creates behavior problems like boredom. Well, you can see a few sources at the bottom of where some of this information came from, but Newton Learning put it together. But I think it gives you an idea of a particular graphic that I found really helpful for this. Which brings me to my third topic, which is, okay, so how do you put